Welcome to China Forum, the leading educational television program on the latest trends and developments in Chinese politics, economics, and society. Today, we have a special historical episode on China and the nuclear bomb. On October 16, 1964, the People's Republic of China detonated its first nuclear weapon, becoming the world's fifth nuclear power. China's successful test came as a relative surprise to the rest of the world. China had started its nuclear program in 1955 with some help from the Soviets, but after relations between Khrushchev and Mao soured in 1959, the Soviets withdrew their help, leaving China to develop an indigenous program. However, China continued making progress and 5 years later successfully tested a uranium fission implosion-type nuclear weapon. The following documentary footage, recovered from a PRC propaganda film, was first aired by China Forum in the 1990s. It discusses China's first 3 nuclear weapons tests. Today, China is one of the 5 nuclear weapons states recognized under the International Non-Proliferation Treaty, along with the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, and France. Today, China has an active arsenal of around 250 nuclear weapons.
The sun rises from the east every morning with rosy rays in myriad shapes. Our great socialist fatherland is in a bright and splendid morning. Our great teacher, great leader, great commander, and great helmsman, Chairman Mao, is the red sun in our hearts. Under the leadership of Chairman Mao and the Chinese Communist Party, under the guidance of the general line for socialist construction of the party to strive hard and strive to advance, and to get greater, faster, better, and more economical results, and under the 3 great movements of class struggle, production struggle, and scientific testing, our Chinese people have achieved great successes. Our nation's people's communes are further developing and consolidating. In the wide countryside, there is revolutionary outlook everywhere, and there is laughter everywhere because of bumper crops. They sing, learn how to do things on a large scale, and have the courage to do things on a large scale. Gather the red flowers which are blooming everywhere on a large scale. The broad masses of workers on the industrial war front are fiercely engaged in revolutionization and fiercely breaking loose from foreignization to choose their own industrial development path. They are applying maximum efforts. They dare to apply maximum efforts. This spirit of applying maximum efforts is prevalent throughout the whole nation. Throughout our great fatherland, the heat of revolution is generating everywhere, and a new all-around leap-forward situation is emerging. Preparations for our nation's first nuclear test are intensely underway. Servicemen in the engineering corps, braving bitter winds and sandstorms, are struggling day and night, overcoming difficulties to erect various buildings and installations for the explosion. The scientific and technical personnel, even with crude instruments because of the lack of sophisticated instruments, are carrying on preparatory work in chemical analysis. Our nation's broad masses of workers, engineers, technical personnel, scientists, and officers and men of the People's Liberation Army all energetically put their efforts together to make a large quantity of instruments and equipment. Here, the various instruments are undergoing a final check before the test. These instruments laid out on the site will accurately record the various results of the test. Chairman Mao has taught us that when the enemy sharpens his sword, we must sharpen our sword. We not only must have our own atomic bomb, but we must, under the threat of the enemy's atomic bomb, acquire the capability which we should have to destroy the enemy and the knowledge to preserve ourselves. The comrades ready for the test are intensely engaged in training activities. Fighters armed with Mao Zedong's thought are not deterred by any difficulty. For training, they pick the hottest time in the day to march in boiling sand. In each training session, how much sweat do they perspire? During the intense struggle, they always maintain the glorious traditions of our Army, resolutely struggling in spite of hardships and displaying the cheerful revolutionary spirit. Comrades of the cultural and arts troupe penetrate deeply into the area to conduct propaganda and stimulating activities. The comrades, using discarded lumber to make poles and grass strings to weave a net, engage in mass physical exercise. In the whole test area, the atmosphere is enveloped with a spirit of unity, tension, solemnity, and animation. Comrades of the Quartermaster Corps are delivering supplies straight to the door with the single purpose of servicing the whole front wholeheartedly. Streamlined trains reach the site and sewing machines are moved to the barracks. The testing day is approaching, and all types of equipment and arms for testing are transported to the site. In this testing, not only will all kinds of testing equipment and installations be used to measure the magnitudes of the atomic bomb, but 4 categories of equipment and installations for national defense, engineering, animals, and civil defense will be subjected to testing. At 1500 hours on October 16, 1964, the event which shocked the whole world finally takes place. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Our nation's first atomic bomb is a success. The atomic bomb designed and made by our own nation is a complete success. Our nation's first nuclear test surpasses the levels of the first nuclear tests of the United States, Britain, and France. This is the result of the efforts of our nation's workers, engineers, technical personnel, scientists, officers and men of the People's Liberation Army, and all those concerned who willingly raised high the great red flag of Mao Zedong's thought, gave prominence to politics, creatively studied and used Chairman Mao's works, and concentrated their efforts to wage a battle of annihilation with united and vigorous cooperation. This is a gigantic success of Mao Zedong's thought. This is a gigantic success of the General Line. Long live the Chinese Communist Party. Long live Chairman Mao. Personnel and cars entering the contaminated area of the explosion for recovery work are given strict examinations. These women comrades are glad to join the ranks of combat. Entering the contaminated area is an intense battle of racing against minutes and seconds to complete the tasks. Chairman Mao says, in our work, we must be enthusiastic but calm, and intense but orderly. See how intensely and earnestly they attend to their work. They successfully return. The people greet them intimately and warmly. In the afternoon of October 16, 1964, Premier Cho announces the news about our nation's successful experiment in testing its first atomic bomb. Work for the second nuclear test has begun. The comrades, not fearing hard labor and fatigue and continual fighting, are eagerly engaged in the new battle. The combat teams are given pre-combat political indoctrination to prepare for an intense struggle maneuver. Another stimulating and jubilant day arrives on May 14, 1965. Successfully explodes its second nuclear bomb in the sky over the western part of our country. extremely accurate and extremely successful explosion. This demonstrates the great results of cooperation among leaders, specialists, and the masses, and of the cooperation of education with research. This is another victory song for Mao Zedong's thought. 教育、研究、生产相结合的伟大成果，这是毛泽东思想的又一曲凯歌。To gain military experience under atomic conditions, the various tactical and maneuvering units enter the area of the explosion to conduct tactical maneuvers. Following Chairman Mao's teachings, they go forward without fear of sacrifices to overwhelm difficulties and grasp victory. Chairman Mao has always taught us that weapons are an important factor in war, but they are not the decisive factor. The decisive factor is not material, but man. Regardless of offensives or defensives, the final decisive battle will be one of close combat at 100 or 200 meters. At that time, it will depend on who is tougher, who can take a position, who can hold it, who dares to see red on his bayonet. At that time, it will depend on one's proletarian consciousness and one's courage. We have the spiritual atomic bomb, which is impossible for the enemy to acquire, and we also have the material atomic bomb. No enemy can defeat us. If the imperialists dare to impose war on our heads, we will finally break the sinews and bones of the aggressors and thoroughly and completely destroy all of them. 我们拥有敌人不可能有的精神原子弹，我们也有了物质原子弹。 任何敌人都不能战胜我们。如果帝国主义胆敢把战争强加在我们头上，我们一定打断侵略者的脊骨，坚决、彻底、干净、全部的把他们消灭掉。在2次核试验成功之后。 After the successful second nuclear testing, work on the third nuclear testing starts. Comrades on the testing site resolutely pursue the working styles of 4 firsts and 3/8. The political air is thick in the entire testing area. 到处是一派浓浓的政治空气。 Look at the sandstorm and the howling wind, how turbulent they are, and the skies and earth, how dark they are. But who cares? No matter how great the difficulties are, they cannot be greater than the determination of fighters who are armed with Mao Zedong's thought. They, from the beginning to the end, resolutely stay at their fighting posts. Chairman Mao says, the Chinese people are not even afraid of death. Mao 主席说：“中国人死都不怕，还怕困难吗？”我们的同志正是按照毛主席的教导去做的。干部同战士发扬愚公移山的精神，共同劳动。Our comrades, cadres, and fighters, following Chairman Mao's teachings of the spirit of the foolish old man who moved the mountains, are working together intensely to complete great engineering works. The comrades, remembering Chairman Mao's teachings, blend their sky-high revolutionary fervor with their scientific attitude to strictly check all types of instruments and installations. These are the materials and equipment for civilian uses to be tested. The stimulating time, 1600 hours on May 9th, 1966, will soon be here. Our nation's first nuclear bomb containing thermomaterials explodes successfully. From the time of the successful explosion of our first atomic bomb to the successful explosion of our first thermonuclear bomb, it took us only a little over 1 year. Such great leap-forward progress proves that the Chinese people, equipped with Mao Zedong's thought, dare to take a road never before taken by their predecessors, dare to scale a peak never before scaled by their predecessors, and are able to equal any miracle done by anyone else. The earth, scorched by the explosion, can still nourish plants. The seeds exposed to the explosion can still germinate and grow.
China has conducted 45 nuclear weapons tests in total, and its last test was in July 1996 before joining the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. China has never used a nuclear weapon in warfare, nor has it pursued a buildup of its arsenal to rival the U.S. and Russia. China's participation in nuclear treaties, initiatives, and other efforts is a rare success story of China's role in modern global governance institutions. Prior to joining the NPT in 1970, China was believed to have aided Pakistan and North Korea's nuclear weapons programs, but nowadays China participates in a variety of multilateral non-proliferation efforts, such as export controls. China's active arsenal of around 250 weapons is relatively small compared to the U.S. and Russia, both of which have pledged to reduce their active weapons to 1,550 within the next decade. Its weapons are deployed on multiple platforms, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and heavy bombers. Since China tested its first bomb in 1964, its status as a modern nuclear power continues to remain an important determinant of regional security in the Asia-Pacific. For now, many feel its limited capabilities are sufficient to deter the U.S. from use of force in the event of a crisis. But the increasingly complex security environment in China's neighborhood could cause China to reevaluate its nuclear posture. To all of you at home, thank you for tuning into this special episode. Please join me again next week on China Forum.